Hey now, welcome to another edition of the Inside BS Show. My name is Dave Lorenzo, and today we're going to have a good time. So whatever you're doing, if you're driving, you're going to want to pull over for this interview because you're not going to be able to control yourself. Honestly, if you're not wearing a diaper, you may just wet your pants because we're going to have a great time today. My guest is Melissa Costello, and she is the CEO and chief storyteller of a company that does video. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, Lorenzo does video. Why is there somebody on a video doing video? No. Melissa Costello does real video for people who use the video to go on and do big things. Like maybe, I don't know, get elected president of the United States. Yeah. That's Melissa Costello. She does video for people like that. She's going to tell us about using video to tell a story. So all you knuckleheads that are out there with your iPhones thinking that you're shooting video, you need to pull up a chair, get your notebook out, or type on your iPad because you're going to school for how to do video the right way. Please join me in welcoming Melissa Costello to the Inside BS Show. All right, Melissa. So now that we've set the bar so unbelievably high, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining me.
I appreciate your confidence, Dave. I'll do my best to, inspire all kinds of odd things.
Well, so I want you to talk about the power of video to move people and to make an emotional connection, because there's 98% of people who are using video today are, they're doing either some, goofy, crap that my kids watch for hours, and apparently a lot of people watch for hours, or it's like a Harvard, classroom where it's like a 3-hour thing and it's the most boring thing ever. Talk about what this medium can really do. What's the power of video to make an emotional connection? Explain that to people, please.
Sure, I would love to. This is one of my favorite topics. It's something I kind of stumbled on, and the more I did it, the more I realized the potential to do it even better and to push it even further. Simply put, the reason it's so powerful is that when you put it on your site, your conversion rate goes up, your Google ranking goes up. Of course, Google does own YouTube. That has something to do with it. So it's got tremendous ROI. But the more interesting part is, why is that happening? And that's because, very simply, 4 times more consumers would rather watch than read. Have you noticed how few people read nowadays? Yeah. Remember back in the day when people would have books on the train? Not so much anymore. And especially younger consumers are more apt to want to watch. And why is that? It's because you get a lot more for less. For instance, 1 minute of reading yields approximately 130 words. That's about what most people can consume. 1 minute of video is the equivalent of 1.8 million words. And you go, wait, what? That sounds insane. Okay, well, a picture's worth 1,000. The reason video is worth 1,800 times more is you get all of this. You get subtext. You get to see, oh, how does she dress? How does she move? What is the sound of her voice? What is that sound of a train approaching in the background? It is the sound of the Brown Line approaching. You get a feel for who that individual is and what their natural habitat is. And that's pretty amazing. So this is, for instance, why I think online dating services encourage you to meet someone sooner rather than later, because you could be, a staggeringly charming, suave, debonair, articulate person in text. Anyone can. But when you show up and you got to string a sentence together in person, that's a different thing. So those of us who do this kind of thing, and my clients, use it to their best advantage.
I think that video is an opportunity as well to really, you can feel someone's energy on video, and you're going to be, you can captivate someone with your words in writing. But if I change the pace of my speech, or I change my intonation, or I'm animated and I take off my glasses and I really make a face like I'm excited about something, you can convey so much more in video. And it only takes a little bit of practice. It doesn't, you just have to be yourself. And if you're a captivating person, you just have to, perceive that you're talking to another person and speak to them like you would if they're in front of you. That's what video can do from a one-on-one standpoint. So, listen, if I've been married a long time. I've been with my wife for over 20 years. If there was video, who knows what the hell could have happened? I mean, things went great for me now, but think about what could have really think about how much better my wife could have done if there was video. Anyway, I digress. You're not my therapist. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do with someone who maybe isn't, doesn't have a charismatic personality, but perhaps has a good story, right? So let's say you had a constitutional law professor who is really good at community organizing, and could tend to go on and on like constitutional law professors can do. What could that person do with video?
Well, as you know, it all comes down to a good conversation. A good conversation is something anyone wants to participate in. So sometimes it's a matter of finding something fascinating they just said and going, wait, what? What did you were in Bora Bora for what, then you're on, then you kind of move the conversation in another direction. But I do a lot, just as you do, I do a lot of research before I interview someone on video for their branding purposes, and find ways to surprise them, because if I can surprise them, I can surprise my audience. And surprise, this is something you learn in art school, like on day one. Surprise is what distinguishes art from almost everything else. Of course, it's also what distinguishes humor. When you don't see something coming, that's what makes you laugh. And laugh is an expression of surprise. And it's also an emotion. So that's what I try to build into everything. Surprise, emotion. Everybody's got a good story, Dave, as you know. Sometimes you have to dig. That's all. It's
funny you say that. I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about a specific subject matter, and they were doing a great job educating people. And I said to them, can you give us an example of this as an application in real life? And the person said, sure. And they started telling me a story, and they said, and that was probably the lowest point in my life, and I was ready to kill myself, and this is what kept me from doing it. And I said, wait a minute. I said, explain that again. And they explained it again. And this is like 25 minutes into the conversation. So the conversation ends, and I'm like, you don't understand how powerful your story can be. You buried the lead. You need to start with that and then go into everything else. You need to start with how this is the lowest point in your life, and here's what happened, and this is what pulled you out of it, and then explain all the technical stuff, because then you got them. Then they want to know what the technical stuff is. Nobody gives a crap about the technical stuff. They care about what happened to you and how it could have been them, right? And that's what video can do.
Dave, it's the why. You're talking about the why. What is your why? What is your
my why?
Dave?
So why am I doing this? Uh-huh. So I realized early on that I had the ability to help people make a great living and live a great life. That's how I close every one of these shows. And I learned that when I was a business strategy consultant and working for the Gallup organization, managing a $250 million a year annual business. And my top client, $10 million a year client, called me a month before the results of a study were due and said, I need somebody to come over and give me top line on this study right now. And I blew off lunch with my fiance, who's now my wife, and I, ran in New York City, December, put on a coat, ran with papers under my arm, not knowing what the hell I was going to say to this guy, but I was going to say something because he's a $10 million a year client. And I got into the crosswalk. And there was 30 of us in the crosswalk, 29 people avoided the taxi that struck me. I don't know. The police report said I flew 23 feet, like 7 inches. I don't remember that. I remember being strapped to a backboard, wheeled down the hall of St. Vincent's Hospital on a gurney, looked up at ceiling tiles, and paralyzed from my armpits down. And I'm thinking to myself, if I can get out of this, I am going to live life on my own terms. I'm going to be able to say no to any client I want. I'm going to build a business that enables my lifestyle. Because P.S. at the time, I was overweight, divorced. This is now going into my second marriage, no kids, plenty of money, but zero life, traveling Sunday night to Friday morning, to just, generally a miserable person with more money than I needed. So I decided I was going to live life on my own terms and build a business that enabled my lifestyle. So when you ask me what my why is to help other people do that, to help other people have a business that enables their lifestyle. And the way that I can reach the most people is by finding people like you who can help them, like you're going to help them tell a story, right? You're going to help them with video. You're going to help them, connect with people at an emotional level. I interviewed somebody else today who's going to fill in another piece of the puzzle. So, even if the only people I touch are the 300 people I interview each year, I've done something to help people enable their life through their work versus the other way around. So, I appreciate you asking. That's my why, but the show's not about me. It's about you.
I was curious. How long have you been doing it?
So we did interviews pre-pandemic. We did a lot of them in person, and they were very good, and I really was energized by them. And then the pandemic struck, and I freaking hated Zoom. And so I promised myself I wouldn't do interviews on Zoom. So I started doing like a solo show, and I was doing a show every day. It's a pandemic. I had nothing to do. I was doing a solo show every day. And then I discovered a particular type of software that we use to shoot these interviews where the quality is pretty good and, we could produce a good product. So I started doing the interviews again. So on and off, we've been doing interviews, 3 or 4 years. But my whole life has been asking people questions and bringing out what their unique ability was. So, consulting, that's what you do, basically. Like yesterday, a guy came to me. He has a sales business, sort of like mine. And he's like, look, people are asking me for a track, like a Six Sigma black belt program for sales. What would you do if somebody said that? I said, what I would do is I would follow around their top 5 people and determine how they sold and create 5 different tracks. This is the Joe track, this is the Sally track, this is the Mary track, and now you've got 3 tracks there, and these are and then you just label them whatever you want to label them. And he's like, well, that's brilliant. He's like, because we don't have to do any work other than follow people around. And that's the essence of consulting, right? So I have been asking questions of people and distilling information for a number of years. And I realized that if I could do it and get it to a lot of people, maybe we could help people. So let's get back to, I don't want to talk about me anymore. You can interview me on your show, but you're on my show. So now I need to ask you questions. I don't care how many trains go by. You're going to answer questions. All right. Let's talk about storytelling. We hear all about story arcs and stuff. Give us break down for us. If you're shooting a short video, what is a story arc, and how important is it in a 5-minute video that's kind of an overview of a company, or a 5-minute video like the great video I saw that you created for a personal injury attorney, which was fantastic. How important is the arc, and how do you come up with what the arc is going to be?
Well, I don't work with formulas. I'm not sure why that is. And that's not even like a conscious decision. It's just you look at the material that you have and you find the story. It's not like every single video is going to start with, one day I was racing across the street with 29 other folks, and along came, that's not how everyone's going to start. In fact, you know what? I can actually tell you why. I like to keep things interesting, and I want for each of my clients to feel that their video is uniquely theirs and uniquely represents them and nobody else. So I can't say they all have the same start or finish, but what they all have is an element of storytelling, because stories are how we communicate the real impact of what we do. If I say, I'm a communicator, I tell stories, whatever. But when I told the story of this particular personal injury attorney, he found out about, and somebody reached out to him, and that person's life changed. And just as you've described why you are here today, that there was this incident that happened in your life that took you in a completely unexpected direction, we all have those moments. And we have the opportunity to create those moments for our clients. And that's what keeps us hooked in, is making that kind of transformational impact on a client through storytelling. Stories are irresistible. I mean, it's from the time we're children. It's how we are taught things. It's how we learn things. And it's the lessons that we retain are the ones that have stories. And I'm sure there is a neurological reason for that. That's not my expertise. I just know that it works. I know that when someone says, well, I met this guy, first of all, I'm hooked. I'm hooked. As opposed to, here are the 10 reasons you should be using video marketing. Oh my God, wake me up when it's over.
You're never going to believe. Yeah, that's anything that starts with "you're never going to believe." You got me. If I'm never going to believe it, I got to hear it.
Well, we are attracted to learn about what other human beings are doing. We can't help it.
Yeah, no. I'm a huge fan, and the way I think of it is I think about, people in cave people times, right? They sat around the fire and they did something, right? They drew pictures, they told stories about their day of conking, saber-toothed tigers on the head and dragging them back to the camp, right? I mean, that's what they did for entertainment. Growing up when I was a kid, my grandparents, and now I'm going to reveal how old I really am. My grandparents had like a black and white TV that got 13 stations, and of those 13 stations, like Channel 12 never worked. So it was really only 12 stations. So when all the news was on or something, it was time to sit around the dining room table, and the adults had coffee and they told stories, and that's what people did to entertain themselves. And so I don't understand where we as kind of a society went off the rails, and all of a sudden we became people who just spew lists, or and part of this is the fault of PowerPoint. Like, PowerPoint really has made us very stupid. Like, PowerPoint, people use PowerPoint as a teleprompter, and they should be using PowerPoint to, if they're going to use it at all, they should be using PowerPoint in a physical presentation to show pictures that evoke emotion. They shouldn't be using it to demonstrate any words or as a crutch to be able to tell their story. What is it, Melissa, when people come to you and they let's say they have dry material, and it's a tough topic. Like let's say there was not a cosmetic surgeon, but some other medical procedure or some doctor, right? And I can give you an example, and you can tell me how you would make it interesting, right? So here in Miami, there's a prostate doctor that does videos. Okay, you can just imagine what these videos are like. How do you take a terrible topic or a topic that's just really tough and sex it up to the point where people are going to want to watch the video? What do you do when that client comes to you, and this is somebody you really could serve because they really need you? How do you juice that up so that it gets interesting?
You get into the emotional topics. You get into, did anybody in your family do this before you? Tell me about that. But did you ever witness something like that? Tell me about a client of yours, a patient who you were their last shot. Tell me how that went down. Tell me if you hear from them still. When do you hear from them? How often? You look at the subjects that move all of us, because we are pretty much wired the same way to respond to certain things, to give an emotional response to certain things. So I dig into the things that I find interesting, and by extension, most of us find interesting. It's really, that part of it isn't that complicated, but I also pivot. If I'm not finding what I need here, I'll try something over there. Because some people do have boundaries, that you've got to dance around.
So talk about your process when you're working with someone. I would imagine what you just described is probably the most challenging part of the process in a lot of ways, right? Because you know how to make something look good, right? You know how to frame a shot, you know what B-roll you want to get based on what the story is after they tell it, right? So you know all of that stuff. It's getting to what the emotional resonance is going to be. So what's your process like? How do you pull that out of the people that you're working with? Like, do you sit with them for a day? Is it an hour interview? Do you interview them over the phone? Do you follow them around? How does it work?
Well, I vastly prefer to interview in person because then I can, back in the day, shake their hand. I can look them in the eye. We're sitting in the same space, and I'm an animated person that encourages them to be a little bit more animated. And I couch a lot of my questions with, how do you feel when, instead of tell me about, because if you say tell me about, you're not necessarily going to get at the emotional content, but how did you feel when he walked in the room? How did you feel when the judge made that announcement? How did you feel when the settlement came through? How did you feel when you woke up in the hospital? These kinds, that's how you get at those. It sounds so simple. But I think when somebody can tell that you are truly engaged and not reading off of a list of the 10 best questions for every interview, honestly, a really good interview is when you throw the list away because you realize you have something much more interesting going on already because you went off script. The objective of an interview is to find the better story because everybody has access to the little blurb on your website or whatever. But how do you get at the deeper, better story? That's the objective of an interview. And you know how it is. You do it all the time. You dig a bit, you try over here, you try over there.
Yeah, no, I do, I get it. I get it to a certain extent, but I feel like the way I feel about what I do is I've got time. I can, even if it's only 30 minutes, you don't have time, right?
Right.
You've got
20
nothing.
minutes sometimes.
Well, if you're lucky, it might not be. If let's say you're doing a video and it's part of, let's say you're doing a video for an evidentiary presentation for a lawyer or, something like that. You got like 5 minutes, right? And you got to make a connection with the jury and it's all got to be admissible. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about the answer to this and I want you to give us the answer in just a sec. What I want to know is, how do you test your content to make sure, look, your gut is probably fantastic. You've been doing this for a while and everything that I've seen that you've done has been spot on. But I don't know if that's your first take or your 15th take, right? So how do you test your content to know that it's going to resonate with the audience? Because it could be good. If it's good for Melissa, that's fine. But it could be good for Melissa. It could be good for the client that you have, but it might not be good for their audience. So how do we know that what you're creating is going to work with the audience? Don't answer. Take a minute and think about it, because I need to remind people that we're brought to you by Sandrowski Corporate Advisors. That may seem like a hard term, but it's really not, because here's the thing. Sandrowski Corporate Advisors can help you when you're going through something really emotional like a litigation event. So let's say you're a lawyer and you're in the middle of a partnership dispute. One partner says a business is worth X, the other partner says the business is worth Y. What do? Well, you're going to have to get someone to value the business. And there's nobody better at doing this. I can say it with complete confidence than Sandrowski Corporate Advisors. Why? Because it's not just making sure the business is worth what everybody says it's worth. It's also convincing the judge. And what does that mean? That means you got to be able to explain complex stuff in a that a layman can understand it. And a judge is there to measure the law, apply the law and the facts, and determine an outcome. He's not there to do math. So the folks at Sandrowski, particularly John Alfonsi, who heads up the litigation support and valuation department, are fantastic at taking complex issues and making them really easy to understand. John's a college professor. He does this all day, every day. He knows how to do it. He can take your financials after they do the valuation and help the judge see that your business should be worth what it's supposed to be worth. So if you're a lawyer and you need help with something like this, I want you to call 866-717-1607, 866-717-1607. Sandrowski Corporate Advisors, they can do this with anyone all over the country. They've done it for years. Ask for John if you're doing a litigation support, if you have a litigation support issue or you need a business valuation issue. Sandrowski Corporate Advisors, they're a CPA firm with a different perspective. We're also brought to you by My Revenue Roadmap Guide. Listen, you need to develop business and you need to do it based on relationships and based on thought leadership. I don't want you using bus bench advertising. I don't want you doing some goofy, hokey TV crap. I mean, I saw something on TV the other day from a personal injury attorney in Texas, Hank the Hammer. Oh my God. God help us if you're doing that. You need a guide to develop business for your professional services firm. You can use My Revenue Roadmap Guide to do it. I'm going to give it to you for free. Here's what you got to do. Go to revenueroadmapguide.com, revenueroadmapguide.com, enter your contact info. You can download the same guide I use for my clients, and you can do it for free. It's my gift to you for watching, for listening. I appreciate you being here. Go to revenueroadmapguide.com, download it today. You'll be glad you did. We're talking to Melissa Costello. She is the video expert you need to help you tell a compelling story to the people you want to do business with you. I want you to reach out to her at 312-305-7500, 312-305-7500. All right, Melissa, before we went on that break, I asked you a question. So tell us, how do you do it? How do you determine whether... So how do you test the content to know whether the people on the other side who are watching the video, this is going to work?
This is a technique that I can't say I consciously developed, but from the beginning, when I had a production company in LA, and I was a director of television commercials for many years, and worked with big national brands, and I discovered then. And you're doing take after take after take after of the same line. As soon as the tear duct got activated, I had it. I was like, great, we can move on. And it wasn't that what they were saying was emotional, intrinsically emotional. It's that they delivered it in a way that felt authentic. And I was like, there it is. Okay, next scene. And the same thing is still true today. When I'm in an interview, and by the way, my whole family we're a very porous bunch emotionally. We are, the first to laugh, the first to cry. And I cry often in interviews, and I laugh often in interviews, and I just give people full disclosure up front, which also gives them permission to be emotional. And I'll go, it's sincerely, easy cry. So I'll just go, that was wonderful. I think we're done. Yeah.
So it's like we're two sides of the same coin. So I did, an interview earlier today. I talked to an immigration attorney, and we talked about the first time I went to a naturalization ceremony. And as when people are sworn in to become citizens of the U.S., and for me, my own personal belief is, as someone who was born here, I take this for granted. And I know a lot of people who are born in the U.S. take our citizenship, this great gift that we've been given to live here, we take it for granted. So in going to a naturalization ceremony, I was a mess. It was like a wedding and a funeral combined, and I was just a ball of mush. So this woman is describing, this immigration attorney, we're talking about immigration law, okay? It's not an emotional topic. Now, she's telling me about a client that went through all of this trouble and then came to this naturalization ceremony, and I'm standing here like, thank goodness we have two feeds and they can cut away from me, because I was a mess. Like I'm muting my mic. I got tissues. I'm reaching for the tissues. So yeah, for me, it's always been an easy thing. And for years, I tried when I spoke from the stage to suppress that, right? I tried not to get emotional. And then in one speech I was given, somebody asked me a question and I told kind of a 9/11 story and I got emotional and the reaction from the audience was unbelievable. And I'm like, God, I got to cry all the time. This is freaking great. So yes, I'm with you. It's inconvenient. My kids make fun of me. There are commercials that make me cry. I'm a mess. It's just terrible. Like, you can't watch TV with me. It's just awful. There's some things I watch. Like, my wife will come in the bedroom sometimes and I'm watching Facebook videos and I'm sobbing and she's like, what is wrong with you?
Well, this is one of the greatest misconceptions about people in media. People say to me all the time, oh, do you watch a movie and go, yeah, I can just see the crane off to the right, or here comes the boom. People in media, in my experience, are the opposite. We are the ones who fall for everything. We became engaged in working in media because we found it so powerful and so moving. So, yeah. I mean, let it rip. That's emotionally.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And here's the thing: you can go, like, you're probably like me. You go to a theater performance, or you can watch a political debate, and you can see somebody do something and go, "That's it." Like with a political debate, for example, you go, "That's the moment. That's your sound bite. That's the cutaway." And it's almost never the contrived zinger. It's always the thing when somebody, when somebody is speaking from a point that's their truth, right? And that's a relative thing because some people believe things to be true that aren't true. But if they're speaking with conviction, and you can see and feel the emotion, and the line is delivered perfectly, or the body language conveys that they really believe this and they're passionate about it, you can point to it and you can go, that's it. I mean, but you can make that. What you do is you make that happen, though. How do you make that happen in people who are untrained, Melissa? That's the thing, right? How do you get them to, like for example, so let's say you work with a litigator, and you do work with lawyers. You work with a lot of lawyers. You're working with a litigator. They practice not being emotional, right? Because they don't want to. They want to have a poker face. They don't want the jury to see it. So how do you get that out of them on a video?
Dave, I feel like you're asking me the same question over and over again. But let me just say, I think that they, first of all, can feel that I am sincerely interested in finding out. It's not just a means to an end. I am a glutton for emotion. I'm a glutton for emotional stories and for authenticity, because authenticity is what I find so moving. So I tell them up front, please don't be offended if I try to redirect a conversation. I'm trying to get at your pulse. I'm trying to get at your personal story. I'm trying to get at your history. And I'm going to keep digging until I get there. And I think also the fact that I am so emotional, Dave, again, gives them permission, to follow my lead. They also look at my work and know that I never expose a client in a video. I wouldn't dream of it. They come across, as people in control, but people who are fully dimensional. Like I never show people crying. I don't believe in it. I think it's too manipulative. I think it's just unfair. I think it's taking advantage of a person. But there's a moment right before you cry, and there's a moment after you cry that has this kind of vulnerability that's even more powerful. So I'm more apt to go for that. And you can see that. They look at my work and they trust me as a result.
Yeah, well, and this is not a journalistic endeavor. You're there to make them look good, so they should be in that mindset to begin with, right? Talk a little bit about persuasion and testimonials, but capturing authentic testimonials so they don't look like hostage videos, right? I see so many of these people with big checks, right?
Yes.
Hammer, wedge, and thump got me $5 million. I am so grateful. My life will never be the same. right? I mean,
So true. So
how do we capture, how this person's life was transformed because of the work so and so did for them? How do you do that?
Well, as I'm sure you know, because this is the way you run your show. You don't go. You ask a question. You ask an authentic question that they can feel you're interested in the response. You're interested to find out where it's going to go. So you turn it into a conversation instead of a presentation. You take it out of the realm of performance and keep it in the realm of an authentic exchange. And everything falls away. That's the objective. The lighting, the green screen, the sound guy, the cameraman, everybody goes away. And it's just this, it's me looking at you and you looking at me. And the reason that a testimonial is so very powerful actually, now that I think of it, the reason is that, it used to be in the old days of getting to know a firm or a company that makes something, is all they had to do is say, I'm Melissa Costello. I am the best director in the country. And people would go, well, okay, I guess she is. She says she is. And then along comes Facebook and along comes apps like Yelp, and we discover, wait, we don't have to listen to what that lady says. Let's see what her customers say. And suddenly we all became habituated to learn about a company through the messaging we get from their actual clients, which is, of course, a much better way to evaluate the impact of what you're doing, the impact of your product or your service. So, but you're right. That's a great idea. But if the testimonial feels false or forced or bored, how about that? Somebody isn't really talking to them.
I needed to get my taxes done anyway. I figured I would go to Joe Smith's tax service. I got the biggest refund of my life. I am so happy.
Call Joe. Yeah, right. Yeah, forget about it. That, you know what? That might have worked 20 years ago. Maybe even not. I don't know.
Now, talk about the process, right? Because there's like some wedding videographer right now is walking into an office and they're gonna shoot a video for somebody, and that's gonna be a horrible mistake, right? Because they got a camera with a Rode microphone bolted to the top, and they're gonna go, okay, go, and that's what the video is gonna look like. What is your process like when you're working with a client?
It's very unusual, actually. Thank you for asking. It's unusual because I've been in the business a long time, and I've tried shooting this way and I've tried shooting that way, and I found a hybrid form of shooting that allows me to get a ridiculous amount of content recorded in one day. So I have 3 cameras running all day. I have 1 camera in a room with me and a green screen and a cameraman and a sound guy, and I'm doing nothing but interviews all day long. The other 2 cameras are shooting B-roll. I've given them very specific shot lists, images with descriptions. Okay, and then this person turns to that person, and the camera pans to the left, and then we cut. Things like that. So they've got an ambitious shoot day, the 2 cameras on their own, and I've got an ambitious shoot day in the green screen room. And the result is, you get hours and hours and hours of stories, whereas if I was also shooting the B-roll, you'd get half as much. So you wind up with this vault. You could put it in the video vault. You wind up with this enormous amount of content that you can go back to and share and tell different stories from. It's almost inexhaustible, and that's the idea, because shooting is expensive. Getting all these people together, might as well get, the biggest bang for your buck by covering a whole lot of material instead of, like, I don't shoot for one video. I used to, when I had my production company, my job was to shoot for one 30-second TV ad. Now I shoot for endless content, and I find it much more interesting, and I find it gives my clients far greater ROI. So that's the unusual part about it. The rest of it, like in the beginning, sit down with leadership, ask them all kinds of questions. Some of them they're expecting, some of them they're not expecting, and I want that to happen. I want them to dig a little deeper into why we're sitting at this table talking about documenting something that's really meaningful to you. Tell me why. Tell me where that started. And then you're going to have to tell me again on the day of the shoot. So I'm trying to figure out, who are you? What makes you different from all the other firms that do what you do? And then based upon that, that drives my shot list and the way I put together the shoot. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's a very professional way to do it compared to, oh, this looks good, let's go over here and shoot something here, right? Which is what most people do. Now, explain to folks the value of the editing process, because for me, people who have just enough knowledge, like somebody like me, that's dangerous, right? So unless you have mastery like you, or have no knowledge and you're completely naive, being in the middle is a very dangerous thing, because you think, if you're me, the editing process is all about technical edits and how things blend together and whatever. That's not what you look for when you edit. When you're in the editing room with an editor, you're not editing, you're sitting behind the editor or next to the editor, and there's somebody doing the technical crap. You're there. What are you looking for?
Good question. I've never been asked this question. That's interesting. First of all, after all these interviews, then those interviews get transcribed. I'm given literally 80 pages, of text to sort through and highlight and start to cut together a script for a 2 to 3 minute video. So a 1-page script. So I will do that, and then I will give it to the editor. She'll cut it together, and then we'll review it together. And just because it looks good on paper doesn't mean it sounds right. So you might hear what looks like a really strong statement actually was just a throwaway. And you go, okay, well, we're going to take that out. Oh, but that's great. So you have to, it's this constantly shifting and moving things around and responding to where it's working and where it's not working, and finding the best. We started this out with you asking about the arc of the story. It's something you find, right? And a lot of it is melody. A lot of it. Does the melody, when he says this, sound like the opening of a story, or does it sound like the end of the story? And that will determine where it goes in the script. So it's an awful lot of feeling it out. Then once we get the assembly cut approved, and that's strictly what, the sync scenes, the content, the text, then you start dropping in the B-roll and playing with that and finding humor in that and finding surprise in that. And then you add the music, and then you add the titles, and at each step, you're adding another dimension to it, and you end up with a round, interesting, complex expression of who you are and what you do. It's really fun. It's a really fun thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're passionate about it, and that's what makes it fun. This is, the fact that you find it fun is what makes it enjoyable. I want to ask you about one more thing, and then I want you to give us 3 things we should take away from our time together, and that is managing the client, right? So people spend too much time watching video, whether it's on television or now streaming or YouTube, which YouTube is like a blessing and a curse, right? Because it's a blessing because people like me can get my message out where I wouldn't have a vehicle to do it otherwise, but it's a curse because what resonates with people is not necessarily the best video, right? So how do you manage? It's goofball crap. It's guys, that's Dude Perfect bouncing a ball off the roof that goes in a basketball hoop a block away, right? That's that's what everybody wants now. So how do you manage the client, given that you can do anything with a camera and through editing and with a green screen in the background? But because you can do everything doesn't mean you need to do everything, right? So how do you manage the client and go, I know you want I know you want a room full of puppies and kittens, but puppies and kittens are not going to get people to hire you to do their banking, right? So how do you manage the client to help them understand that based on the interviews, what's going to resonate with the audience, and this is what you think we should do?
Wow. It was a lot harder back in the Hollywood days when they gave you a script and everybody had a prescribed idea of exactly how that commercial would play when it was shot. So my interpretation was competing with everybody else's interpretation of what a great, exciting, authentic expression of the script is. This is what I no longer have to deal with. This is the good news. So I go into these kinds of assignments, and a client will say, "So what's the video gonna feel like? What's it gonna be about?" And I say, candidly, I don't know. Let's find out. We'll find out on the day of the shoot, some of it, but we won't really know until we start cutting it together and putting that next to that. So I feel very fortunate at this stage in my career that my clients literally never say, "What? I don't, why did you, how about another?" It doesn't happen, but I will say this.
You're not getting notes? They're not giving you notes?
Shockingly, I know. You would think, but but you know what, Dave? This is the word I swore I wouldn't say anymore. I'm a perfectionist. And I don't let it go until it's just right. I don't show it. I go, I don't like that edit. I don't like that color. The music is hitting at the wrong time. And I keep moving it until it's just right, until it sings, without you going, "Wait, what was that?" Yeah. And you do this,
All right.
We do the same thing this way, though, Dave. This will be edited, thank God.
Well, I mean, we pretty much just run it together, and we're gonna edit it to make sure that everything is in focus. But that's about it.
Oh, Dave! Wow.
We do too many of these. There won't be. I'm not cutting anything out. This is all gonna be in. I promise you'll be in focus. I don't guarantee anything other than that.
Dave, how did I miss that?
So now I want you to think of. Okay. I want you to think of 3 things we should take away from this interview, and there'll be no edits. So get them right now. I'm just kidding. I want to think of 3 things. I want you to think of. I don't want to think of anything. I want you to think of 3 things we're going to take away from our time together today.
Okay. First of all, let me compliment you on that. Is like the best threat. Warning, there is no editing here. That is like, wow.
We don't do any freaking editing. It's all going in.
So get it right.
So listen, good, bad, or ugly, they're getting Melissa Costello whether they like it or not.
Going out.
Think of 3 things. Think of 3 things we should take away from our time together. I gotta get some people to give some business to Sandrowski Corporate Advisors. So listen. You need serious people handling your accounting because you sure as hell don't have serious people doing this video. So here's what you need to do. You need to call Sandrowski Corporate Advisors because there's nobody more serious at saving you money and doing your taxes. I want you to reach out to them today. Even if you're happy with the person who's doing your taxes, let them look them over. If they can't do anything for you, they're not gonna charge you an arm and a leg. They're gonna tell you they can't do anything for you. But if you're a small business and you're a business owner and you're gonna sell your business, Sandrowski Corporate Advisors can apply something that's called the Qualified Small Business Tax Exemption. It's a real thing. They need to look at your business and go back 5 years and examine how your business is organized and how you've been paying your taxes. Now, if you're selling in the next 5 years, Sandrowski can help you. They can position your business for sale, but you got to call them now. The best time to call them would have been when you started your business. You didn't do it because you weren't listening to the show, so you didn't know about them. Well, now you do, so call them today. Give them a call at 866-717-1607, 866-717-1607. Sandrowski Corporate Advisors. They're a CPA firm with a different perspective. When you're ready to sell your business, if you're within 5 years, call them They will help you save a ton of money on the capital gains taxes that will come when you liquidate your business. You're going to want to call them because we're talking about real money. 866-717-1607. Sandrowski Corporate Advisors. They've been doing this for over 35 years. All right, Melissa Costello. Now, what are the 3 things we should take away from our time together?
Okay, number 1, authenticity. Don't do anything without it. Just don't. If there is an element of falsehood to it or reluctance, skip it. Number 2, stories. Got to tell stories, otherwise people don't really understand what you do. You may be a lawyer, but what you do is you transform lives by you fill in the blanks. And third, video. I mean, the best way to express why video is something a client of mine, Mark Dabowski, who I hope will soon be a guest on your show, Dave. And Mark said to me after the experience of working with me, said anyone who doesn't have video on their site and the best video they can afford is losing business every day, they just don't know it.
Melissa, perfect. I can't tell you how fun this has been. We could talk for another hour. This has been so much fun. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for joining me here today, and thank you for being such a good sport and putting up with me. Well, by the way, folks, we're shooting this at like 5 o'clock after she's had a long day, I've had a long day, and we both probably should be drinking at this point. So
it's time. Next time we're doing a role reversal, Dave. It's the me interviewing Dave Lorenzo show.
Melissa, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Alrighty, folks, that'll do it for another episode of the Inside BS Show. If you like what you heard, and how could you not like what you heard today, give us a hey now down in the comments. That's right, we read all the comments, the good, the bad, and the ugly. In fact, if you curse me out in the comments, I'll curse you right back. So go do it right now. Hey now down in the comments. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you want to see more of. This is the Inside BS Show. My name is Dave Lorenzo. I'm here every day with a brand new interview. Until tomorrow, here's hoping you make a great living and live a great life.